I'd always thought of Spain as my escape hatch, the place where an American girl like me could reinvent herself without the weight of Texas expectations pressing down. At 25, I traded the flatlands of Dallas for the labyrinthine streets of Seville, chasing a freelance graphic design gig that barely paid the rent on my tiny apartment in Triana. The Guadalquivir River snaked through the city like a vein of forgotten secrets, and I'd spend my days sketching flamenco dancers in the shadow of the Alcazar, their passion a stark contrast to the quiet ache I'd carried since college. Coming out as a lesbian back home had been less a fireworks show and more a slow burn, my parents' awkward silences at Thanksgiving, the way my dad would pat my shoulder and change the subject to football. But here, amid the tapas bars and guitar strums, I could breathe. Or so I thought. That summer, Dad announced he was coming to visit, dragging along his old college buddy Delisa for what he called a boys' trip with estrogen. Dad and Delisa went way back, to those hazy UT Austin years in the 90s, when they were both journalism majors dodging deadlines in smoky dive bars. She'd been the firecracker of their trio, sharp-tongued, with a laugh that could cut through a room, while Dad was the steady one, the guy who married his high school sweetheart and built a life in real estate. Delisa, though. She'd zigzagged, a string of reporter gigs from Chicago to LA, a messy divorce in her 30s that left her gun-shy about rings, and now, pushing 50, she was a high school English teacher in Austin, single but content, as Dad put it. Straight as an arrow, he'd joke, the kind of woman who quoted Maya Angelou in casual conversation and volunteered at women's shelters on weekends. I hadn't seen her since I was 18, back when she was just Aunt Dee, slipping me 20s for college books. But emails over the years had kept us loosely tethered, her asking about my sketches, me venting about bad dates. When Dad texted that they were landing in Seville, I felt a flicker of excitement. Maybe it'd be nice, showing them my adopted home, pretending for a week that family didn't come with footnotes. They arrived on a sweltering July afternoon, Dad in his khakis and polo, lugging a duffel that smelled like barbecue sauce, and Delisa trailing behind, her silver-streaked bob catching the sun like a halo. She looked different. Leaner, somehow, with those cheekbones sharper than I remembered, and eyes the color of aged whiskey, warm but guarded. Dakota, darlin', she drawled in that pure Texas twang, pulling me into a hug that lingered a beat too long, her chambray shirt soft against my cheek. You've turned into a goddamn vision. This city's agreeing with you. We settled into the finca I'd rented outside the city, a crumbling stone farmhouse on the edge of an olive grove, the kind of place Hemingway might have holed up in if he'd traded bullfights for heartbreak. Dad crashed on the couch with a beer, regaling us with stories of his latest subdivision flop, while Delisa and I unpacked in the kitchen, bumping elbows over crates of oranges and manchego. Your dad's still the same old softy, she said, slicing cheese with a pocket knife, her fingers steady and scarred from years of fieldwork. But you've got that quiet fire. Like your mom, God rest her. Mom had passed when I was 12, cancer, quick and cruel, and Delisa had been there for the funeral, holding Dad's hand while I hid in my room sketching ghosts. The mention stung, but her gaze softened it, like she knew the shape of that grief without needing words. That first night, we wandered into town for gazpacho and albondigas, the streets alive with buskers and the scent of jasmine. Dad dozed off at the table after his second sangria, and Delisa leaned in, her voice low. Tell me about the real you, Coda. The one who left Texas behind. I hesitated, then spilled it all, the awkward hookups in Austin bars, the girlfriend who'd ghosted me after 6 months, the way Spain felt like permission to exist. She listened without flinching, her hand brushing mine across the table, a touch so fleeting I might have imagined it. Love's a bastard, she said finally, swirling her wine. It shows up when you're not looking and demands everything. But you're brave for chasing it. Braver than I ever was. By day 3, Dad had declared the heat un-American and retreated to air-conditioned museums, leaving Delisa and me to explore. We hiked the groves at dawn, her stories weaving through the air like smoke, tales of botched assignments in Sarajevo, the ex-husband who traded her for a younger model. She was straight, sure, but but the way she talked about women in her books, the reverence in her voice for Woolf or Morrison, made me wonder. Or maybe I was projecting, my pulse quickening whenever she laughed at my dumb jokes or pointed out a hidden mirador with that conspiratorial grin. One afternoon, we found ourselves at the Plaza de España, the tiled bridges arching like lovers' arms over the moat. The sun dipped low, painting the bridges in pinks and golds, and tourists milled about in rowboats. Delisa rented one, insisting I row while she lounged in the stern, her legs stretched out, bare feet dangling in the water. "Feels like freedom, doesn't it?" she murmured, tilting her head back. I nodded, my arms burning, stealing glances at the curve of her neck, the way her shirt gaped just enough to reveal the lace edge of her bra. God, I was hopeless. That night, back at the finca, a storm rolled in from the Atlantic, fierce and unannounced, the kind that turns Andalusian summers feral. Dad was in Seville for a bullfight, his one guilty indulgence, leaving us alone with a bottle of Rioja and the crackle of thunder. We sat on the porch swing, rain sheeting down, and the conversation turned reckless. "Ever wonder what it'd be like?" I asked, emboldened by the wine, "to love someone you're not supposed to?" Her eyes met mine, stormy as the sky. "All the time, kiddo. But wondering's as far as it goes." She reached for her glass, her fingers grazing my knee, and the air thickened, charged like the moments before lightning. I wanted to lean in, to taste the salt of her skin, but she pulled back, standing abruptly. "Let's call it a night before we do something stupid." I lay awake for hours, the rain a relentless drumbeat, replaying that graze, that almost. By morning, the storm had passed, but the tension lingered, a low hum under every shared glance. Dad returned oblivious, chattering about matadors, and we slipped back into tourist mode, visiting the cathedral, sampling churros in hidden patios. But Delisa was quieter now, her laughs forced, her touches avoided. I told myself it was nothing, that I was reading maps into shadows. Then came the betrayal, or the first crack in it, anyway. We'd driven to Córdoba for the day, the Mezquita's arches a hypnotic maze of red and white. Dad wandered off to haggle for leather goods, and Delisa and I ducked into a courtyard cafe, the air heavy with orange blossoms. She ordered café con leche, her hands wrapping the cup like it was an anchor. "Cote," she started, voice barely above the fountain's trickle, "about last night. I don't want things to get weird. You're like family." The words landed like a slap, polite but final. I forced a smile, nodding through the burn in my throat. "Yeah, of course. Water under the bridge." But as we walked back to the car, her phone buzzed, a text from Tom, her ex, the one she'd laughed off as ancient history. I glimpsed it over her shoulder, "Miss you. Come home soon. We can fix this." She pocketed it quick, but the damage was done. Straight as an arrow, indeed, pointed right back at the life she'd left in Austin. That evening, as we grilled sardines on the finca's patio, Dad raised a toast to old friends and new horizons. Delisa clinked her glass to his, then to mine, her eyes holding a fraction too long. "To horizons," she echoed, and I wondered if she meant the ones we could never cross. The night blurred into laughter and stars, but inside, I was unraveling, the pull toward her a tide I couldn't fight. Little did I know, the real storm was just brewing. The days blurred after Córdoba, a haze of forced normalcy that chafed like sand in my shoes. Dad, bless his oblivious heart, planned a road trip to Ronda, the dramatic gorge town perched on cliffs like a dare from God, and we piled into the rental Fiat, windows down, the Sierra Nevada spine rising in the distance. Radio static crackled with flamenco riffs, and Dad belted out off-key lyrics, his baritone a comforting rumble. Delisa sat shotgun, maps spread across her lap, pointing out detours to white villages that dotted the hills like forgotten prayers. I huddled in the back, sketching her profile in my notebook, the strong line of her jaw, the way her hair curled damply at her temples from the humidity. Every bump in the road jolted me closer to her seat, our eyes meeting in the rearview, a silent Morse code of what-ifs. Ronda was magic, the kind that sneaks up on you. We wandered the Puente Nuevo, the bridge spanning a 400-foot chasm where mist rose like ghosts from the Guadalquivir River below. Dad posed for selfies, wind whipping his hair, while Delisa and I lingered at the edge, peering down into the vertigo. "Makes you feel small, doesn't it?" she said, her voice carrying over the roar. "Like all our dramas are just specks." I leaned on the railing beside her, close enough to smell her citrus soap. "Or like some falls are worth the risk." The words hung there, bold and foolish, and she turned, her face inches from mine, wind tousling her bob. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed, the gorge, the tourists, Dad's distant laughter, all fading to the pulse in her throat. Then she stepped back, exhaling sharply. "Dakota, don't." The drive home was quieter, the radio tuned low to avoid conversation. That night, with Dad snoring through a Doors documentary on his tablet, Delisa and I ended up in the kitchen again, chopping figs for breakfast the next day. The air was thick with unspoken static, the knife stunk a metronome to my nerves. "Why'd you really come on this trip?" I asked, unable to stop myself. "Dad's idea, or?" She set the knife down, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her gaze steady. "Your dad, he's family. But you. I saw your emails, Coda. That spark in your words. Thought maybe I could. I don't know, be the aunt who gets it." She laughed, but it was brittle, like glass under pressure. "Turns out, I'm the one who doesn't." I crossed the room, heart hammering, and took her hand, calloused from grading papers, warm from the summer. "Then let me show you." Our fingers laced, tentative, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she stepped closer, her free hand tracing my arm, light as a question. The kiss, when it came, was slow, hesitant lips meeting in the dim lamplight, tasting of figs and fear. It wasn't fireworks, it was a dam breaking, years of buried longing flooding out in whispers and sighs. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together, the world outside the finca forgotten. For the next 2 days, it was stolen moments, a brush of thighs under the tapas table in town, her foot hooking mine during siesta. We'd sneak to the olive grove at dusk, sitting against gnarled trunks, her head on my shoulder as she confessed fragments, the college crush on a female professor she'd buried under frat parties, the marriage to Tom that was safe but hollow. "I thought straight was the default," she murmured one evening, tracing patterns in the dirt. "But with you, it's like waking up." I fell hard, the kind of love that reshapes your bones. Dakota the drifter became Dakota the anchor, sketching portraits of her in the margins of my days, Delisa laughing at a street pup, Delisa reading Lorca under lantern light. Dad suspected nothing, too busy with his guidebook conquests, but the guilt gnawed at me. She was his best friend, for Christ's sake, the woman who'd held his hand at Mom's grave. And Tom. His texts lit up her phone like accusations, please wrapped in nostalgia, remember our lake house weekends? We were good once. The high wore thin on the flight back to Seville, Dad upgrading to business class for a nap, leaving us in economy's crush. Turbulence rattled the plane, and in the dim cabin, her hand found mine under the blanket, squeezing tight. "This scares me," she admitted, voice muffled by the engines. "What happens when we land?" "We figure it out," I whispered, kissing her knuckles. "One grove at a time." But reality crashed in that night. Dad had planned a farewell dinner at a rooftop spot overlooking the Giralda Tower, all twinkling lights and paella steam. Midway through the entree, her phone vibrated, Tom again, this time a call. She excused herself, slipping to the balcony, and I watched from afar as her posture shifted, shoulders hunching under the city glow. Dad chuckled about some old prank, oblivious, but I excused myself too, weaving through waitstaff to join her. She was crying, quiet, shoulder-shaking sobs that twisted my gut. "He wants me back," she said when I touched her elbow, not turning. "Says he's changed, that we could try counseling. And God, Coda, part of me wants to believe it." The betrayal hit like vertigo, sharper than Rhonda's gorge. "What about us?" I choked out, voice raw. "The Grove. The kiss. Was that just Spain? She whirled then, eyes red-rimmed, grasping my arms. No. God, no. It's real, terrifyingly real. But Tom's my history, my safety net. And you. You're the leap I might not survive. Thunder rumbled distant, a prelude to the storm we'd ignored. Dad called us back in, plates cooling, and we played the part, smiles over flan, toasts to next time. But the fracture was there, a hairline crack widening with every forced laugh. The next morning, as we packed for their flight home, she cornered me in the bedroom, door clicked shut. I love you, she blurted, the words a grenade. In a way I never loved him. But I need time, to untangle this mess. I nodded, tears blurring the suitcase zippers, pulling her into a hug that tasted like goodbye. Don't let fear win, Dee. You're braver than that. They left at noon, Dad waving from the cab, Delisa's gaze lingering on me through the window like a promise, or a plea. Alone again, the finca echoed empty, the olive leaves whispering accusations. I dove into work, sketches turning frantic, emails from her trickling in, miss your laugh already. Thinking of the bridge. But then, radio silence, days stretching to a week, her profile unchanged on social media, no stories of Austin sunsets. The call came on a muggy August night, rain lashing my apartment window like judgment. It was Dad, voice thick. Coda. It's Delisa. She and Tom, they're getting married. Quick ceremony next month. Wanted me to tell you, since you're close. The line went dead in my hand, or maybe I dropped it. Betrayal bloomed hot and vicious, not just hers, but the lie of our stolen days, the way she'd worn my heart like a borrowed scarf. I stormed the streets, flamenco bars blurring into neon, downing gin until the Giralda spun like a top. How could she? The woman who'd quoted Angelou, who'd held me like I was scripture. But beneath the rage, pity stirred, for her, chained to a life half-lived, for me, loving the unlovable. I didn't sleep, replaying the grove, the kiss, the crack in her voice. By dawn, resolve hardened, I'd go home, confront it all. Spain had given me wings, but they were clipped now, feathers scattered in the rain. Little did I know, the line she'd cross next would redefine us both. Austin hit me like a fever dream when I landed 2 weeks later, the sprawl of highways, the barbecue haze, the relentless blue sky that felt like exposure. I'd sublet my Seville place indefinitely, telling clients it was a sabbatical, but really, it was flight, back to the nest to claw answers from the wreckage. Dad picked me up at the airport, his hug bone-crushingly tight, eyes searching mine for the cracks I tried to hide. Good to have you home, kiddo. Place hasn't been the same without your sketches on the fridge. Home. The word tasted like ash. We drove in silence mostly, radio humming Willie Nelson, until he cleared his throat. Delisa. She's over the moon. Tom's good for her, steady. You okay with this? I know you two bonded in Spain. I stared out at the passing mesquite, forcing lightness. Yeah, Dad. Water under the bridge. But inside, the bridge was burning, embers of that Rhonda kiss smoldering. The wedding was set for a crisp October afternoon at Tom's lake house, ironic, given her texts about it being their happy place. I RSVP'd yes, because avoidance was cowardice, and if confrontation was the price of closure, I'd pay it. The weeks dragged. I crashed at Dad's, picking up design gigs for local firms, nights spent walking Lady Bird Lake Trail, the bat colony's exodus a black cloud mirroring my mood. Friends dragged me to queer nights at Cheer Up Charlie's, but the flirtations fell flat, echoes of auburn hair and whiskey eyes haunting every dance floor. Delisa reached out once, a hesitant email, can't wait to see you. Spain feels like a dream now. Forgive my silence. I deleted it unread, the betrayal too fresh, a wound scabbed over but throbbing. The ceremony was small, lakeside, 50 souls in sundresses and seersucker, wildflowers nodding in the breeze off the water. I arrived early, dress borrowed from a cousin, its blue folds hiding the tremor in my hands. Dad clapped my shoulder, steering me toward the arbor where Tom stood, beaming in his linen suit, oblivious to the undercurrents. Then she appeared, Delisa, in ivory silk that skimmed her frame like forgiveness, her bob pinned with daisies, eyes scanning the crowd until they locked on mine. She faltered, just a step, but it was enough, vulnerability cracking her composure. The vows were poetic, Tom promising forever anchors, her responses soft, measured. But as the officiant pronounced them wed, thunder grumbled low, uninvited, and the sky split open, not a downpour, but a steady weep that sent guests scattering for tents. I lingered under the arbor, rain pattering the leaves, when she approached, bouquet dripping. "Cote," she breathed, voice raw. "You came. Wouldn't miss it." Sarcasm edged my tone, but she flinched, stepping closer, the scent of her, vanilla and lake mist, pulling me under. "This isn't what you think." Her hand hovered near mine, then dropped. "Tom, he found out about us. Cornered me when I got back, all tears and ultimatums. Said he'd make it hell for your dad if I didn't fix things." The world tilted, rain blurring her face. "And you chose him. After everything." Tears mixed with droplets on her cheeks, carving paths. "I chose not to destroy lives. Your dad's my brother in all but blood. But God, Dakota, every night I dream of the grove, your mouth on mine. It's killing me." Anger surged, hot and clarifying. "Then why not fight? You're the one who taught me love demands everything, Angelou, remember? Or was that just pretty words for a straight girl's vacation fling?" She recoiled, then surged forward, gripping my arms, her wedding band cold against my skin. "It wasn't a fling. I love you, fiercely, stupidly. But love isn't a fairy tale, it's trenches. I thought marrying him would bury it, make it go away. But here you are, and it's alive, clawing out." The tent flaps rustled nearby, guests murmuring, Dad's voice calling, but we were in our own storm, faces inches apart, breaths mingling. "Then cross the line," I whispered, desperate, for real this time. "Walk away." Her eyes searched mine, turmoil swirling like the gathering clouds. Lightning forked the horizon, illuminating the raw plea in her face, the woman who'd built walls from newsprint and regret, now crumbling. "I can't, not today. But tomorrow. Give me tomorrow." She pulled me into the tent then, our hands brushing unseen, and we played the part through cake and toasts, her laughter forced, my smiles brittle. Dad danced with her to an old Patsy Cline tune, twirling her like old times, and I watched from the sidelines, heart a battlefield. That night, alone in my old bedroom at Dad's, my phone lit up, a text from her, lake house porch. "Midnight. Please." The clock ticked mercilessly, rain easing to a drizzle, and at 11:58, I slipped out, driving the dark roads with pulse thunderous. She was there, silhouette against the water, dress traded for jeans and a hoodie, bare feet on the damp wood. No words at first, just her stepping into my space, hands framing my face, thumbs brushing tears I hadn't known were falling. "I'm sorry," she murmured, forehead to mine. "For the silence, the choice. I was scared, of losing you, of losing me." "Then don't." My voice broke, hands fisting her hoodie. "Be brave, Dee. For us." The kiss was inevitable, rain-slick and urgent, her lips claiming mine with a hunger that erased the months. We sank to the porch swing, tangled in whispers and touches, nothing fevered, just the slow unraveling of guards, her story spilling like confessions, my sketches pulled from my bag to show her the portraits I'd hidden. Hours passed in that limbo, dawn creeping pink over the lake, until she pulled back, resolve hardening her gaze. "I'm filing papers Monday," she said, voice steady for the first time. "Tom deserves truth, not a ghost. And your dad. I'll tell him everything. He loves you too much to hate me for this." Relief crashed through me, mingled with terror, the fallout, the judgments. But as the sun crested, gilding her face, I saw it, not a fairy tale, but a human one, flawed, fought for. We drove back separately, her hand squeezing mine at a stoplight, a promise in the grip. The months that followed were trenches, as she'd said, awkward family dinners where Dad's questions hung heavy, then softened to understanding hugs, Tom's quiet exit, gracious in defeat, therapy sessions where Delisa unpacked her straight armor, piece by jagged piece. We took it slow, coffee dates in Austin's coffee shops, weekends escaping to hill country hikes, her teaching me Angelou lines by heart, me sketching her anew, unburdened. Spain called us back that spring, a return to the finca, olive blossoms in riot. No storms this time, just us on the porch swing, her head on my shoulder, the Guadalquivir a distant lullaby. We made it, I murmured, lacing our fingers. She smiled, that firecracker grin undimmed. Horizons, coda. Wide open. And in that human victory, scarred, shared, we found our ever after, not perfect, but profoundly ours.